This is Dr. Elliot Realsteen, and I have a PhD in physics, English literature, and most importantly, a PhD in street. Bullying is a huge problem these days. Well, so we're told. In fact, it is such a problem that there are many anti-bullying measures that have been put into place, including Anti-Bullying Day, which the UN has declared to be May 4th. But other countries in the world who recognize this day celebrate it at the end of February. On this day, people virtue signal to wear pink t-shirts in order to take a stand against bullying. They wear pink, which is the color I thought was designated for activism concerning breast cancer during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Looks like the anti-bullying people bullied the poor breast cancer people into sharing their awareness color. I mean, couldn't the anti-bully people have left pink to the breast cancer people and maybe instead use, yellow or something? In fact, I think that color recently became available. But before I get into the particulars, let me state the painfully obvious, and that is that wearing a pink shirt or a button showing your support against bullying does absolutely nothing to actually prevent bullying. The hubris of these people to think that a schoolyard bully who gets kicks out of beating the hell out of some other kid will stop the beatings because a bunch of bored suburban adults decided to wear pink shirts to work one day is beyond derisory. Getting into the minutiae of the anti-bullying movement and the new standards put in place to quell bullying, I am here to inform everyone that these measures will result in the opposite of their intended effect. Surprise, surprise. But beyond Pink Shirt Day, what schools have done to preclude bullying is to suspend or expel children who bully others. And many high schools have gone even further and have a one-strike policy against fighting, meaning if students get into a physical altercation on school grounds for any reason, they are expelled. Now, these measures might work if each student lived in a vacuum and did not interact or did not have the ability to interact with one another beyond the school walls, but anyone living on Earth right now knows that this is the furthest point from our actual reality. Children at increasingly younger ages are being connected on the internet, meaning they can connect with other people at all hours of the day, no matter where they are. This means that a bully's reach extends beyond the physical parameters of the schoolyard, much further. And what these anti-bully people and their one-strike policy fails to realize is that these implementations actually exacerbate bullying and tension between individuals. It does not reduce it. People, especially youths, hell-bent on confrontation and the release of interpersonal tension, will go through any measure in which to achieve this. Anti-bullying groups do not want to acknowledge this behavioral axiom amongst adolescents, and furthermore do not want to recognize the residual effects their measures have on the proliferation of cyberbullying. Even if interpersonal bullying was left alone and nothing done about it, cyberbullying is the new frontier of bullying and will only get much worse in the future. People live their lives through the internet. There is basically no such thing as privacy anymore. People share their lives with friends and strangers online every day. This has positive and negative effects, but in terms of cyberbullying, it is going to make the bullying problem a behemoth for the coming generations. The amount of ammunition the current group of people are gifting to the future generation of cyberbullies is astounding. and only grows the more interconnection via the internet gets more ingrained in our daily existences. Think about it this way. When someone taunted you, especially when you were younger, what was the worst thing they could say? Well, it would be something about your parents or family members, because they are people who you care deeply about being pulled into the conflict and ridiculed horribly, and they are not there to defend themselves. And most damaging about this situation is that you are the reason why they are being targeted. Someone saying that you have a small dick is much less hurtful than someone telling you that your dad lost his job because he was a deadbeat. What the next generation of bullies will have at their fingertips to use to victims online is pictures of the victim's parents and family members in embarrassing or provocative situations, their resume and job history, and the many things that they have said or were said about them that have been immortalized online. Bullies will have their hands on near unfettered deleterious information. Reposting a picture of a kid's mother or aunt that she posted online years prior of her in a bikini at a drunken music festival with a disparaging remark, or denigrating a kid's grandfather over his work history posted online will hurt much more than a personal insult or series of punches to the stomach ever could. How institutions and schools exacerbate this problem, which will already reach a fever pitch on its own, thanks to our current careless and brainless generation, is that they are doing everything they can to preclude conflict on an interpersonal level. Meaning, instead of tension between parties getting released and the problem dealt with, or at least semi-dealt with, it only escalates further. And what then becomes the only outlet for these kids who want to release this tension? Well, it's the internet. And as we all know, people say things online and in text that are greatly exaggerated from what they would say to a person's face, or things they wouldn't say at all in a face-to-face setting. The more barriers you place in between the two conflicting parties, the more vicious the attack and rhetoric becomes. If you think children now have mental health problems due to the rigors of the current climate, wait until bullying goes exclusively cyber and the bullies can pull information and images of loved ones into the mix. What these institutions are doing is backwards, is 5 steps behind the current and future bullying milieu, and does not comprehend unintended consequences. The solution to this problem is first to recognize that bullying will never ever go away. You may be able to outlaw it on school playgrounds with one-strike policies, but it will simply evolve in form and take place in another setting which transcends the schoolyard. Bullying is a problem as old as time itself. So the best manner to deal with this problem is to not be arrogant enough to think that you can rid the world of this inexorable problem with the swipe of a pen. The solution is to do your best to maintain and control the problem so that it does not reach unmanageable levels, like in the future with more advanced forms of cyberbullying. The answer is to go backwards in time and deal with these situations in an old school way. If a problem has manifested between two individuals, do not ignore the problem and expel it away, as this only aggravates the existing tension. Instead, we should encourage kids, if they have a problem, to deal with it face to face. For instance, the high school I went to has a long history, and in the early days, If there were two kids who were at loggerheads with one another, they were shown to the principal's office, and the principal would give them each a pair of boxing gloves and allow them to have it out for a few minutes in front of a school supervisor. After it was over, they would shake hands and go their separate ways. And the instances of mental health problems amongst the kids at that time due to the effects of bullying, I guarantee you, were a lot lower than with kids now. Now, I know in today's highly sensitive, overly protected culture, this would never be allowed. Never. But if you think about the principles of this solution mechanism, it does a better job of quelling bully-type tension amongst individuals than simply expelling the problem away does. Allowing people who have a dispute that has escalated beyond the realm of words to release their tension, frustration, and anger onto the other person in a controlled and supervised environment causes greater release of hostility and is a mechanism which actually builds respect between adversaries. If you have taken your enemy's best punch and he has taken yours and is still standing afterwards, you automatically gain a greater sense of admiration for that person. White suburban mothers, and fathers nowadays too, unfortunately, would never allow this type of solution to land even 50 miles away from the problem. However, as a professional, I suggest that a physical release of tension in a controlled environment supervised by adults is a much better alternative than a psychological release of tension in an uncontrolled environment like the internet. After all, a black eye, a bleeding cut, or a damaged tooth is a more desirable outcome than a damaged psychological state and mental health issues. So maybe instead of coddling children and encouraging them to ignore problems, we should encourage them to face their problems head on. Right?